just fine. Just getting there was fine.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Are you the type of person at 6:30 is more likely the time you're going to bed?
Correct.
Okay.
I go to bed around between 1 and 2.
Right.
And I get up at 10, and I really don't care. That's what I like about retirement.
No, that
I love that.
There's I don't know, it differs by area, but there's a magic sleeping time for people that are night owls that's between like 9:30 and 11, right? And there's that sweet spot where you feel like you get 4 hours of sleep in an hour in there. It's a really nice spot. What do you think made you excel at the job?
I think I can actually remember when. I was still writing for Gene Crane in the morning, and I think I was doing the 7 a.m. news or something like that. And you always try to emulate the people that you respected in the business. And one day, it was near Thanksgiving, and there was very little going on in the wire services, and I still had to write a half hour. And I decided that there just wasn't anything going on, so I just decided to be me. And on Thanksgiving Day, I was thinking about all those people who weren't home for all the various reasons you wouldn't be home. You had to work, like the cops and the firemen and all those people who were overseas in the military. And I wrote this dissertation about how lucky we were to be home and enjoying our families on Thanksgiving when all these other people weren't around. And I remember Gene Crane got the script, and he's reading it, and he says, "Who the hell wrote this?" I says, "Me." He says, "Bill, do you really write this? Not on the wire, sir?" I says, "Yeah, that was me." And he goes, "You're getting it. This," and he said, "This is really good." And I remember right there, I decided, I'm not going to try to emulate you or anybody else. I'm just going to be me. And even when I started on the air, everybody wanted to be Walter Cronkite.
Right.
Guess what? I can't be Walter Cronkite. I'm not.
He's Walter Cronkite.
Yeah, and he's a different guy, and he's way, way, way over my head. And after a while, I just decided, hey, look, when I go out there, I'm just going to be me. And if you don't like it, that's fine. If you like it, that's great. But I can't be anybody else. And once I decided, I made that mindset choice, I enjoyed it. It was easy.
What year did you retire?
2000, the last day of 2006. Yeah.
In the time you were there, how did you see, and it's done a quantum leap even since, how did you see technology change?
Oh, man, it's night and day. When I first started, none of us knew what we were doing.
Well, you talked about having to produce the story, write the story, report the story, edit the story.
Correct. You had to be all those things before you became a reporter. Like, you were a full-time writer for at least a year. You had to be a copy boy for at least a year. You had to be a full-time writer for at least a year. You had to be a producer of the news for at least a year. You had to be on the assignment desk for at least a year.
So you had to get your 10,000 hours.
Oh, man. You had to produce a show, and after that, they said, okay, now you can become a reporter. That's how it was.
Right.
I mean, you really went through everybody's job. So when you were on the street, you knew everybody's job inside.
Well, do you have any favorite interviews that you did?
Oh, man. I did so many. I did so many crazy people. I loved people like Willie Sutton. You know, I asked him, did you really say you robbed banks because that's where the money was? He said, yeah, I did. Yeah. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, how come you were brilliant? The guy was brilliant. I mean, the way he broke out of jail and never hurt anybody, ever. I said, do you ever think you spent most of your life in jail? You ever think if I ever used my brains for something good, I could have been a rich guy? He goes, yeah, but it wasn't nearly as exciting. I'm sitting there thinking, this guy is crazy. But I did enjoy him. There were just a lot of people.
Frank Rizzo?
Frank Rizzo was the best interview around. He was incredible. You never had any idea what this guy was going to say. You can ask him about the weather, and he'd come off about invading Cuba and winning.
Yeah, with the Philadelphia.
He was the best interview in the
But
United
he seemed to respect you. He seemed to like you.
Frank Rizzo and I had a very strange relationship because in the beginning he didn't like me at all. Because Rizzo looked at life and people one way, black and white.
Right.
If he liked you, he loved you. If he didn't like you, he hated you.
And it didn't change that often.
You were either on his side or you weren't. And he could not understand. One day I could say the mayor did this and it was good. And the next day say he did this and it was really stupid. And he used to ask the crews. He thought the crews were his people. The reporters were elitists in his mind. And he could not understand that concept that I was just doing my job and calling it like I saw it. And the crews used to tell him, I'm telling you, this is the way this guy is. He's like this every day. That he's just going to say what he thinks is true. But he won't take a cheap shot. And it took about a year. Because he didn't like me for at least a year. And after a while, he started figuring out that Baldini is just going to, he won't screw me, but he's not going to pat me on the back every day either.
Right.
So he kind of accepted this relationship.
There was a lot of people that he never seemed to warm up to at all in the media. And at least I remember seeing interviews, and I remember watching my father watch interviews, and it was even then, it was reporters you trusted and reporters you didn't trust as much or thought were competent and informative. And I remember that he always leaned into your interviews, when you were talking about something. So you went from film to videotape.
Correct. Yeah.
Which had to be huge.
Well, yeah, with film, the difference was in film, the cameras were enormous. And you shot all day, and then you had to bring the film back, and then you had to process the film.
Right.
That took maybe an hour, 2 hours, depending on how much film you had.
And then you didn't know the quality of what you got.
Exactly. Every day was different. You just never knew. And videotape was instantaneous. There was a big change. And, we had to make the transition. It was a good transition. But the technology changed enormously. I mean, went from this idea of film to, being live, instantaneous every day, all day.
Do you feel that in that change in technology in any way that the quality got watered down?
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Okay.
No doubt. See, the film, you shot all day. You came back. When they were processing the film, you had time to think. What am I going to do? I'm going to put this together. And then when you got it, you looked at it, and then you wrote it. Today, you go to a story, and you're there 15 minutes, and they want you live. Whether you know anything about it or not, you're going to be live. There's no time to think about anything or prepare anything. It isn't the package. They don't care about the story itself. They want you live, period.
Well, and you see that difference. There was something with John Rollins from Channel 6, and he was doing a story, and he pulled me aside, and he said, could you explain to me the side scan sonar? He wanted to know more about it. He didn't just want to say side scan sonar. He wanted to it was ground penetrating radar. He wanted to know about it. And none of the other people cared. They were just writing the words.
He's old time. I know him.
Yeah.
He's old time reporter. He's good.
Who else do you remember? Who are some of the old school guys you remember working with?
Well, Channel 10, they're all gone. There's nobody there that I grew up with. I still see Terry Ruggles and Steve Levy and Sherry Bank and Vice Kahama. We have lunch like every 2 weeks.
Okay.
So we stick together, and we're all happy we're retired, except for Vi. He's the only one working. So he gets to check more than anybody else because he has an income.
You got to keep somebody who's still working.
You pay for it, yeah. But, we all feel the same way, that it isn't like it used to be. And therefore we don't miss it as much.
It seems more, I don't want to say dirty, but seems more soiled in some way or less pure.
Here's the problem. I'll give you an easy example. When I started, the first thing they asked you when you walked in that door after you did a story, the first thing, do you go both sides of that story? And if you said no, you better have a damn good reason why you didn't get the other side. For example, the other guy wouldn't talk. You called him at least 3 times. And he refused because he was guilty of sin. But the point was that you tried. And you had to say that in the story. Everything had to be balanced. You left your prejudice, any prejudice you had, you left it at the door. You left your political feelings at the door. Today, nobody asks you anything. They don't ask you, do you go both sides? They don't really care. The other thing was ethics were a big part of your job. They had meetings. They sent you to school. They had what they called a blue book. It was very thick, 2 inches thick. And I'll give you an example of how critical they were. A guy named Bill Stewart, who was really an extremely good reporter, went to the network, and he got killed on the air in Nigeria. On the air, he got killed. Bill Stewart was an extremely good reporter, but when he was at Channel 10, he was doing a story on firefighters. And as part of the story, he asked them to drive a fire truck down the street with the lights on. Because that wasn't a real action and it was staged, they refused to air the piece, and they suspended him for 2 weeks.
That was considered a violation of integrity?
Everything had to be exactly the way it was for real. There was no misrepresenting anything at any time. Now it would have gone on there with no problem.
Yeah, I mean they'll
wouldn't even be asked.
Well, I've heard stories of people putting up crime scene tape after it was taken down to make it look more authentic.
You would have gotten fired for that.
Well, if you got fired for
now, you wouldn't even. Go ahead. Don't worry about it.
What do you think your legacy is?
I have no idea. It's not for me to decide what my legacy is.
What have people said?
I would just hope people would say that, that I was fair and that I left certain situations better off than I found them. If that's what people said, I'd be a happy guy.
Are people happy to see you?
Yes. Most people, yeah.
A lot of reporters can't say that.
No,
Matter of fact, there's very few that can say that people light up and recognize them and have fond memories.
I always found that it was a lot easier for me to be nice than not nice. And I could never understand why some people that I worked with weren't nice off the air. Especially those egomaniacs who went into the business to be recognized, right? And then after a while, they are recognized in, at a restaurant or in a mall, and they're upset.
Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with this picture? It would have been a lot easier to be nice to that person than to be rude. And some decided to be rude, which always astounded me. I always thought it was the dumbest thing in the world.
I think that when you did the story, what came across was that you love the job, you like the story, and you were trying to like the person, or like the person. But it just, all the things you described came out, and those things just don't seem to exist anymore in the background.
You don't have the time either, right? Back in the day, every station had an investigative unit, and we did a lot of investigative reports. No, nobody does any.
Well, and
it costs money.
They're under the 24-hour news cycle, and they're under these constraints, and they're competing with somebody who's blogging out of their basement, effectively.
And money is a big part.
Yeah.
Let me give you another example of the difference. When I was on the assignment desk, right after I was a copy boy and a writer, I was working overnight at 12 to, what was it, 12 to 12 to 8. Midnight to 8. And the bottom line was there was a crazy guy up in Harrisburg. And this is when you only did very local. Harrisburg was like out there. And this guy was raping young girls. And I remember reading this story and thinking, this guy is nuts. This is a hell of a story. So I called in 2 crews overnight and rented an airplane